Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Brought to you by Junk Be Gone and the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning, good selection Sunday morning. Welcome into the Paper Be Gone studios for the Sports Source. We appreciate you being with us today. We have a packed show filled with predictions, which, last week we ended the show, all 5 people on the panel. We predicted how far Tennessee would go in the SEC tournament. We all said, probably lose to Kentucky in the semifinals. So we should have some great predictions for you today. I think we'll all just go with Texas A&M to make everybody happy. We're going to break down good, bad matchups in the tourney. We're going to talk about the Texas A&M game and preview that. We even got a question that kind of ties into Tennessee's football situation with the NCAA. Packed show. Let's dive right into it because we got a lot to cover. First segment of today's program brought to you by the Garza Law Firm. So many of Marcos Garza's commercials that you see are shot right here in Knoxville. And, you're speaking with East Tennesseans. You see Knoxville sites. You see Knoxville people. You know why that is? Well, it's pretty simple. The Garza Law Firm is located in Knoxville. So it would make sense. But there are a lot of attorneys and law firms out there who aren't based in Knoxville. And their commercials, they don't show you a whole lot of Knoxville in those ads. They don't show you East Tennesseans talking in those ads. That's because they're not from here. If you find yourself in need of an attorney, do the smart thing. Call a local attorney who knows the local systems. Marcos Garza and the Garza Law Firm. Visit them at garzalaw.com. All right, let's welcome in the first panel for today. We got a couple more guys waiting in the wings. We have right here VFL Isaiah Victor. This has to be a fun day for you. A guy who made it into the NCAA tournament all 4 of his years here at Tennessee. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Mark Pankratz, former Vol assistant coach, former D1 player who sat through Selection Sunday in both worlds as a player and a coach when he was at Milwaukee playing for Bruce Pearl. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Right there, Josh Ward from 99.1 The Sports Animal. And next to him from 99.1 The Sports Animal, we have Jimmy Himes. Guys, thanks to both of you for being with us today.
Thank you.
First segment here, Tennessee knocks off Kentucky in Tampa yesterday in front of thousands of Big Blue fans. They take that thing over every year. I know it made people mad that the announcers called it the Kentucky Invitational. I don't know why that makes you mad. It's true. I mean, it's the Kentucky thing, and you won anyway. Vols take it 69-62. It is the 3rd time in 6 tournaments that Rick Barnes has taken Tennessee to the finals. We'll show a little number on that later on how many coaches at Tennessee have made the finals. Nobody like Rick Barnes. It's also 4 wins this year over top 5 teams for Tennessee. Twice they've beaten Kentucky, beat Arizona, beat Auburn. Heck of a way to close out the year, what they're doing right now. They've now won 10 of their last 11 games. Just thoughts on that victory. I'll start with you, Isaiah, because as a guy who is a Kentucky native who came to Tennessee to play, I know that the Kentucky game is big for you. So not only to beat them 2 out of 3 times this year and for Barnes to beat them 10 out of 17 times, to get them in the tournament, that has to be fun.
Oh, yeah, for sure, because I get calls all the time, especially right before the Kentucky game or right after if they win, and it's from family members a lot of times in Kentucky. And the big thing is we beat them at a neutral site this time. We won a lot of home games, but we knew we couldn't play our tournament games at home, unfortunately. But this team has grown, and they've grown a lot. We see our freshmen becoming sophomores, as we talked about earlier in the season, and you see them maturing, and it's good to see different players stepping up at different times. That's a sign of a really good team that could make a really strong run, and I think we'll do that based on what I saw yesterday.
Mark, your thoughts on that game yesterday?
Well, I think you win a basketball game where we've talked about having to shoot lights out. We didn't really shoot lights out. Josiah Jordan-James stepped up, knocked down a couple big ones. Kennedy Chandler coming out of timeout, back-to-back layups when Kentucky had kind of made their run. But to Isaiah's point, get different guys stepping up. I mean, Brandon Huntley Hatfield, the way that he performed in stints in that game was impressive. You've got guys that are making their mark on the game. Vescovi didn't shoot it well, but man, he wears the team down. And when you go up against a Texas A&M team now that will have played 1 extra game, his movement and our depth could be a really factor in this game today.
Thoughts, guys, on what you saw yesterday?
Yeah, and to add to that, we just saw Tennessee continue to play the kind of defense that is so difficult for the opponent. Like Kentucky shot terribly, and some of that was they missed shots they could have hit, but part of that was Tennessee just made things so difficult for Kentucky. I think all season long for opponents, everything's been difficult. Entry passes, trying to get to the basket, shooting from the outside, and it was really difficult for Kentucky. And you think about when Tennessee played at Kentucky, Jimmy, and how easy it looked for Kentucky against Tennessee. Yeah. And the feeling Tennessee had, everything has been different since then for Tennessee.
Yeah, Tennessee actually shot well in Lexington and got beat because Kentucky shot phenomenally. I was really impressed with Kennedy Chandler. Here's a guy that you weren't really sure how effective he might be, given that he went down with an ankle injury 3 times in the previous game and he did a lot of rehab. And he made the key baskets that Mark was talking about. I thought that was huge. And I also had to wonder, as I saw Brandon Huntley-Hatfield play a pretty good game, if he had gotten more minutes earlier. Now, you might argue, well, he had to earn those minutes, but gosh, if he had had some more minutes earlier, I just wonder how much better he might be right now. But I give Tennessee a lot of credit. They've had this tendency to build up a pretty good lead, and then the other team makes a run, and you're thinking, uh-oh, and then Tennessee finds a way to close it out.
The Chandler thing, we said last week on the show, one of the keys that no one's talking about was injuries, because Tennessee's had 2 of Rick Barnes' trips to the tournament. You had Fulkerson out last minute. You had Kyle Alexander out. When he twisted his ankle, I thought, here we go again. And then Huntley-Hatfield rolled his ankle. I thought, man, this team has some bad luck. I was impressed by Chandler's performance. I expected him to show some wear and tear on that ankle. You didn't see it yesterday. I said this earlier in the year, and you guys told me to tap the brakes, and wisely so. But I will say this. When Kennedy Chandler is on, when he's at his best, I don't know. Hey, look, Tobias Harris was a great player, but I never looked at him and thought, well, wow, what a pro he is going to make. I look at Kennedy Chandler and see a guy for the first time since Allen Houston that I look at and say, that guy's going to be in the NBA for a long time. In my opinion, he just looks at a different level. In terms of Tennessee getting 5-star guys, you had a couple good guys last year. Chandler, to me, maybe it's just the position he plays, he's just a different beast in my view.
I understand why. He makes the electric plays.
Yeah.
Mark was talking about the 2 plays he made back-to-back when we needed them.
And as a simpleton, that's what impresses me.
Yeah. When he drove to the basket, finished over the big man, and then he got the steal, I think that changed the whole complexion of the game. So he makes those electric plays. He's a lot faster than some of the guys that you spoke of. So it's more exciting, and it shows more talent, I believe. So I can understand why.
But this is why, from a development standpoint, I mean, now his ability to defend, he's vastly improved his defense. He's vastly improved his understanding of the game, being able to make the proper pass, when to attack, when not to attack, finishing now at all 3 levels. I mean, that's now, yes, it's the ooh and ah type big shots, but what makes him attractive to the next level, and a testament to Barnes' staff and their discipline and what the high expectations result in with the right player, is what we're getting from Kennedy Chandler, which he's now become an elite player.
And he still had a couple bad plays, though. He got in too deep, turned it over a couple times, but you kind of forget about that when you win. So.
Here's one thing not to forget about, though. If you're a Tennessee fan, and you know this, but you don't take those wins over Kentucky for granted. We were talking, Rick Barnes 10-7 against Calipari and Kentucky. You can go back through history. I don't know how many coaches ever in more than a century of Kentucky basketball have beaten them 10 times in a stretch of 17 games. And it's not like Kentucky.
These are really good Kentucky teams.
This isn't Billy Gillespie's Kentucky. This isn't, the end of the Tubby Smith era. This is teams that competes for Final Fours and Elite Eights and everything else. Rick Barnes deserves a lot of credit for that. Tennessee hot in March. I didn't remember Tennessee being on this kind of a roll many times, so I went back and looked. Take a look at this. In terms of combined February and March wins, Tennessee has 11 already, okay? Now, you're now in the tough part of the season. It can end at any time, but the most ever for Tennessee was that Sweet 16 run when they were number 1 in 2008, that 1 week at number 1 that year. 13 combined wins in February and March. If you win today and then reach the Sweet 16, you'll have done that. You'll have passed that and broken the record. Not a lot of times where Tennessee has been this hot at this time of year. When we come back, we get it. It's a tournament sport, and Rick Barnes' tournament record in recent years hasn't been great, so people always pull out their hair and throw up their hands come March. But when you look at where Rick Barnes is versus other SEC coaches, consider when he was hired, you have half the people that were saying, you got to retread. Who would you trade for him right now? Who would you trade him for right now in the SEC? Let's discuss that next, where he ranks among his peers in the Southeastern Conference. Come on back on the Sports Source.